wants coal power gone sooner rather than later, but some provinces are saying not so fast. The current deadline for eliminating coal-fired power plants is 2040. The Globe and Mail is reporting the federal government wants to move that deadline up. The Prime Minister wants to reach a deal by the fall ahead of the UN Climate Summit in Morocco. Both Saskatchewan and Nova Scotia, however, say they won't be ready to phase out coal-fired plants for years. They say getting rid of coal sooner would push up electricity prices dramatically. Nova Scotia is threatening legal action if the federal government intervenes. Tom Adams is an energy consultant and researcher. Nice to see you. What's with that? What are these provinces, especially Saskatchewan and Nova Scotia, what's keeping them from making this transition?
Well, both of those are examples of provinces that are very dependent on coal. They're getting in the order of 50% of their electricity supply. And Alberta's another example. The alternatives to coal have been tried out, practiced in places like Ontario that has already gone through the coal phase out. And it turned out to be a lot more expensive than people expected, and very controversial, and it raised became a political issue. In the case of Nova Scotia, just to take one example. They've had a coal phase-out plan for some years now. The Harper government introduced phase-out schedule. It was negotiated with the Nova Scotia government. Part of that plan was to get green power from Labrador. Now that project's in a whole...
Muskrat Falls?
Muskrat Falls. With a lot of transmission to submarine cables and all these, very costly project. Now the project is way over budget, way delayed. They've just lost a huge court case in relative to some contractual rights about the operation of the facility. So the ability of that Labrador power to help Nova Scotia get off coal, that's now a new question mark, just one of many question marks about how the practicalities of getting rid of coal.
And so do we need to move the goalposts? Like, what do we do about this?
Well, as a practical matter, the real alternative to coal is gas. But in the case of both New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, which are both jurisdictions that have significant exposure to this coal,
if they open themselves up to...
Both of those provinces have big political movements there that don't want any local gas development. So the local gas development is frozen. The offshore gas in Nova Scotia is declining and is about to disappear. So there's no local gas. They're at the end of long pipelines. As Ontario has demonstrated, the wind and solar and biomass alternatives for replacing coal have proven to be very problematic. So, I think the practicality that Nova Scotia and Saskatchewan are speaking to is what are we going to do? In the case of Saskatchewan, what they've done there is that the provincial government has invested a vast amount of money in trying to capture CO2 out of one of their coal plants. And they're saying, look, we've already paid here. We've made this big commitment. We're one of the leading jurisdictions in trying to do this process of capturing CO2. If it works in Saskatchewan, it's a technology that could be applied elsewhere.
And is it working for the large part?
Well, what Saskatchewan has discovered is that even that of these different processes to try and manage the emissions from coal, the carbon capture and sequestration thing, which people had thought might be a kind of practical solution, they're finding in Saskatchewan expensive, difficult. It reduces the serviceability of the coal plants themselves. Their productivity. So, they're finding it's not an easy ride. The reason people put in coal, it was a practical solution. It was an inexpensive, reliable, power on demand. the alternatives that are going to have to backfill if coal disappears have to be able to satisfy that need. That's tough work.
And so if you're not going to frack and the carbon capture doesn't work and Muskrat Falls isn't going to come online soon enough, do we simply need to move the dates?
Well, Nova Scotia is in a very tough spot. You know, they're not just relying on coal for a substantial portion of their power supply. They also use oil.
Yes.
Price volatility for that fuel has been one of the reasons they stayed in coal. You know, to try and combat that, to mitigate their exposure to that volatile and costly fuel.
It's a tricky situation. It really is.
This is not simple.
No, it is not. Well, thank you for helping us understand it. It really does help.
Thank you.
All right, take care.